Okay.
Hello, good evening, good evening, good evening. For many of you, welcome to show number 2 for the evening. So I am joined by the infamous Grumpy G. As I always tell you, he exists on caffeine and hate. Right, G? Maybe G's not listening.
Sorry.
Yoda just stepped in. She can't find your channel. She's having a geriatric moment.
Stop it.
Maybe that's why you're always so angry.
No,
Yep.
the goats.
There it is.
All right. We also have this.
Okay, I'm sorry, dude. Yes, I am extremely angry all the time.
Okay, cool. Very good. We also have the survivalist prepper with us tonight, and he joined us for the first time, a week ago or a handful of days ago.
Yeah.
And, yep. So we're welcome you back. And tonight we're going to welcome a new person, which is Mind4Survival. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So
Thank you.
Today we thought we would just kind of talk about what's going on in the world, maybe talk about getting free, maybe talk about, just kind of all that stuff. So, survivalist prepper, you were talking earlier, there's so much going on in the world today you'd love to talk about. So let's just start with you. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, this is I'm really hesitant. And it's unfortunate. We live in the United States, and I've got to be hesitant about how and what to talk about on YouTube and all that. But there's just some of the things that went on this week, especially at the Capitol. And it goes back to what Grumpy was talking about in one of his old videos and what we talked about last time. There's two different sets of ideologies in the United States these days. And it's just and it's not necessarily the event that itself that got me going. It's how the event unfolded. And I'm sure a lot of people know what I'm talking about, and I'm just going to call it the event.
Okay.
But it's almost like they're pushing us into this third world, like we're trying to be Brazil or South America or something like that, to where all of this craziness is just accepted and normal, and us on the outside are looking at this and we're the ones that are chastised. So it just, I don't know, it just seems like every time you think that they've sort of gone off the deep end, they go even deeper. And it drives me nuts. I don't know. I know Brian posted a couple links to me about the situation. I'm sure you guys have seen just all the stuff that's going on in general. I
try to be a student of the Tytler cycle. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that even is, but it's the cycle of civilizations. Mm-hmm. And, they talk a lot in there about how the further that it progresses into tyranny and the further it, progresses into bondage, which is your final stage in that cycle, the more ridiculous the laws become.
Oh, I thought you were talking about some of the trans people that were at the White House.
Yeah. Ridiculous, right? Yeah. Well, what do you think about that?
On that, you're not supposed to misgender anyone or anything like that, right? Mm-hmm. So if a woman, a biological woman, were to go to the Capitol and take off her top, you think she'd get arrested?
No.
You don't?
I thought they were talking about a trans. No, a biological woman probably would.
Yeah,
it depends on what party she was, whether she was conservative or not, right?
Yeah. Well, the trans did it, and everything's fine, and that is just completely normal. So you're not supposed to misgender and the whole what is a woman thing and all that. But at the same time, two different sets of standards when it doesn't fit their narrative. So
their narrative today is we have to accept them. Right. It's like it goes back to the old respect thing. Right. They don't want to have to earn respect. They don't want to have to earn acceptance. They just want, you have to accept them. And if you don't, you say anything against it, then they try to shut you down. Right. And their level of acceptance is getting half naked or all the way naked in front of a bunch of kids and saying, no, that this isn't grooming. And it was interesting. I was reading a post on Facebook from active self-protection, John, I can't think of his last name right now. Anyway, he made this post as John Coria, right? And he has I think he has like 2 million subscribers on YouTube, something in that neighborhood. And he made a post about affirming with trans and stuff like that. And there was actually one of his followers as a trans person got in there and goes, I don't even know what's going on. He's like, or she, I don't know what the hell, but it was all about their, like when you push this stuff in front of kids and doing what they're doing, that's not acceptable, but they're trying to get us to be like, oh no, you have to accept that. So they're pushing it a bridge too far. And I think it's about ready to start coming back and biting them somehow.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but Kansas just recently became the first state to define what a woman was legally. So they passed a bill called the Woman's Bill of Rights, which defined a woman as someone who was born with the reproductive organs to have a child, a female reproductive organs to have a child. So then the governor vetoed it. But anyway, they were the first ones to pass the bill. Just saying.
Well, and I think that the deeper issue here, you know, it's one thing for them to have a subjective view of reality, right? That you can think whatever you want. That's as an American, that's your right.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that they're lying about biology, and then not only do they want us to believe the lie, they want us to repeat the lie. And the thing that bothers me about everything that's gone on recently is people are actually doing that. They're repeating the lie because they're afraid of getting canceled. They're afraid of being attacked. And what does that say for our future? If, you know, in the old Soviet Union, if you've ever read Gulag Archipelago, right, you know that the government lied to the people. The people knew they were lying. The government knew they were lying, and everybody pretended that there was no lie. And that's where we're headed, which is scary as anything to me. You know.
Yeah, beyond this stuff.
It goes to the word, Dale and I have talked about this on our show. It goes to the word when they say trans woman and trans man. They're lying to you up front, right? Because what's a trans woman? It's a man who is trans, right? That says, no, I'm a woman. So even in how they're getting us to try to speak about it, and if you say anything other than that, you know, you're terrible, evil, you're violating ESG, DEI, CEI, and all these different things that they're putting in to try to police the system. I don't know if you've seen the videos that resurfaced of Larry Fink of BlackRock lately, talking about forcing companies and forcing people into their ESG way of thought. You know, and it's like, you're looking at them like, it boggles my mind after, you guys are all probably about in the same age group, after growing up in the like the 70s and the 80s and all that as a kid, and watching what we used to show how crazy and insane Russia was, or the Soviet Union was, with the lies. And they're doing the same thing here now.
Yeah. And there's people that are absolutely okay with it. And that's the concerning part. There are, I don't know if it's as big of a majority as the media and the politicians would have you believe, and all the, you know, the really loud voices, because I saw a stat about men in women's sports, and 70% of Americans are against that. But you wouldn't know that listening to politicians, listening to the media, listening to all this stuff. So I don't know that it's not necessarily the majority, but it feels like the majority. And I think that's all that matters.
So if you look back throughout history, you realize that the Bolsheviks in 1917 Russia only made up about 4 or 5% of the population. And it's been proven time and time again that you don't have to have a majority. All you have to have is a dedicated minority that's willing to take the steps that are necessary to move the revolution forward. And we've seen that in our own government. And it started out, if you think back to the 70s and 80s, there weren't that many people. Remember, Jeff Foxworthy made his career off of the whole making fun of political correctness thing. And the stuff that he joked about in the 80s has come true, you know, and they say, well, nobody's going to do X. And they've said that as long as I've been an adult, I remember this. Nobody's going to come after your guns. What are they talking about now? They're talking about, you've got people protesting on the grass in front of the Colorado governor's mansion for an executive order to ban all guns. We're not going to come after your children. Remember when the San Francisco men's choir, the gay choir, made the video where they were talking about coming after people's children, and when people got upset, they're like, "Oh, it's just a joke. It's just a joke." They're teaching that curriculum in schools now, and the FBI is going after parents that are standing up and saying, "No, we will not have this." So, you know, anytime they tell us this is not what we're doing, they're lying. They're lying straight to our faces, and that is exactly what they want to do. This whole thing, you asked me, Okay, I realized that last week I screwed up by not having a topic whenever you asked what was I following. And I actually followed something this week, Tag, and you didn't ask me. I'm a little upset. Okay.
Bud, we're 10 minutes into the live stream. Take a chill, dude.
Okay. Gavin Newsom, the 28th Amendment.
Okay.
Okay. Political stunt. How much news coverage has been given to that over the last week? It takes 3/4. There are 4 ways that could happen, and they all involve either 3/4 of the legislation, 3/4 of the states, state houses, or 3/4 of the Congress to approve it. It's not going to happen. Yet they're selling that fear. And you know what? And it's a complete setup so he can run for president, you know? And so again, what they say is a lie. Okay.
Breathe.
Okay. I'm good. I'm good.
What,
Hopefully we didn't demonetize you in the first 10 minutes.
what is the 28th Amendment?
So Gavin Newsom submitted a proposal for the 28th Amendment, which would, quote unquote, reaffirm the Second Amendment while banning all the weapons that they think are dangerous.
Oh,
You have to. There's Dale. I can't. If I tried to explain it fully, I would probably get an aneurysm right here on YouTube, because the twisted logic that he goes through to get where he is phenomenal. It's unbelievable.
It's a political stunt.
He's pandering to the base, right? In a way, but those political stunts have a habit of sticking. But he's pandering to the base, just like with the reparations deal. They pushed reparations out. I'm in LA right now. They pushed reparations out here. And then when all of a sudden, the reparations panel comes back and says, "Oh yeah, we want $5 million a piece." Now Gavin Newsom is crickets on it. It's this thing. They have a bill going up before the state right now here that basically, if you're a parent, if you don't affirm your 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds transsexual, feelings, then you could have your kids taken away. And then they made a ward of the state. Right. So it's this lunacy that they're one more thing, like you were talking about earlier. It's just one more thing that they keep throwing at us.
Well, it's been a long time in the makings, right? I mean, this has been going on. This is, decades of generations of programming that's started with our kids, right? And it just progresses through schools and the Prussian school systems and all of those things. I was reading about the 20th Amendment while you guys were talking. And so basically raises the firearm age to 21, institutes a waiting period, and bars all civilians from purchasing assault rifles. Based on the governor's website.
That's what confused me, because I was like, wait, isn't there only 27?
Yeah.
So
right.
Well,
yeah.
And he's calling for a convention of states, and it bothers me the way things are going down that direction, because like Mind4Survival said, it's gonna stick. There are people out there that are so disengaged that this narrative is going to get out there, and the news has been pushing it big time, and it's going to stick, and people are going to think, yeah, this is a great idea.
Well, and it's the third of it's a third of the population that you're mentioning, but the problem is it's the third that are in the big cities. Like I can't throw a rock out here without hitting a Karen in LA. Yeah. Every time you turn around, it's a Karen, and they are so. Where you see them on TV out here, where they're talking about their 4-year-olds and their 6-year-olds that are trans and this and that, and how they're supporting them. And I'm like, you're talking them into this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Brian is in the belly of the beast right now. He's in California. I think, it's always been, Hollywood has always shaped popular culture, but it seems like these days, back in, the era of black and white movies, and even when we were kids watching movies, it wasn't so extreme like it is these days, because it was just a few movies a year. These days, Hollywood isn't just Hollywood. Hollywood is all over the place. It's the film industry. It's the entertainment industry. It's the music industry. It's all of these different things that are shaping all that stuff. And and even the tech companies out in California have that that same sort of mindset with all the stuff, the same sort of mindset that these Hollywood actors and these, and Gavin Newsom, I sort of include in the whole Hollywood actor thing, although he decided to be a political Hollywood actor. But it's all that same sort of mentality that's sort of getting pushed throughout the United States. And I think I think once our generation and maybe even one generation below us sort of kind of go by the wayside, who knows what this country, like I said, it turning into some sort of South American Marxism, socialism, communism, totalitarianism, pick your ism.
But I think isn't there hope though? I mean, because I think as these things continue to we talked about the Tytler cycle earlier and how the laws get more absurd. I think people begin more and more standing up, right? As time goes on and people start leaving. I mean, like California, there's a mass exodus out of California right now, right? There's a mass exodus out of a lot of these places for these very reasons. And so maybe what happens over time, this is why I put Tony's comment up, is maybe you really start creating, some of the stuff that's like going up in Idaho, how they're trying to separate and divide Idaho into the state of liberty. And I don't know if you're following all that, but all that stuff that goes on up there. I think that there's hope that they underestimate people to some degree and that there'll be this big divide. And I think they're pushing for it anyway. So I think they maybe like it. What do you guys think about that? Is there hope?
I think there's always hope. I think that they feel righteous. And anytime people feel righteous, right, I think that sets themselves up for failure. So, I think at the same time that they're pushing all this stuff, like out here, I grew up as what I call a California conservative. It's basically a libertarian, right? Like, leave me alone. You do you. My next door neighbor growing up, their kid, he was gay. He taught me how to shoot a bow, and he ended up dying of HIV in the 80s and 90s. And I didn't care. I grew up, the school I went to was equally white, Hispanic, Asian, and some blacks thrown in. Like, I don't care who you are, what you do. Keep your stuff to yourself. Don't push it on other people. And what I'm seeing is you see a lot of, especially in the comedians, right? And some journalists that are still out there. There's Jimmy Dore that we talk about on our show a lot. Jimmy Dore he was a big left-wing guy. And now I've gone to a couple of his comedy shows and he's starting to bag on the trans movement, like all this trans stuff and how it's, they're literally trying to oppress people with their views. You look at the Glenn Greenwalds. I mean, Matt Taibbi, if you watched him during his congressional testimony, like he's a super lefty, and he's up there lobbying against all this stuff that they're doing now. Like when he was before Congress lobbying, when they were talking about the Twitter files, he's the one that was running all the Twitter file stuff. Literally, while he's before Congress, they had an IRS agent show up at his house. Right? They launched an investigation into him in December, and the investigation was started on December 24th, which I believe was a Saturday. The federal government you can't even get them to work on Friday, much less somebody in the federal government starting up a report or something on a Saturday, the day before Christmas. They're targeting this guy. So I think you're seeing more and more people on that side that are going, hey, this is not freedom. This is not what we're about. And I think you're starting to see that coalesce where people are, yeah, you know what, we can work through some of these differences we have. But the main thing is the freedom and the intrusiveness of our government. I mean, I was in the military. I was pro-American. I loved Ronald Reagan, the whole 9 yards, and pushing people like myself, and I assume others of you, into some of these corners where you're looking at our nation, you're going, this is not what I support. And turning us into what's becoming the enemy it's amazing. So I think there is hope. I think they're pushing so far that they may be running out of rope.
I've seen some things recently that give me just a couple things that are, I'll just talk a little bit about this, but when you see a little bit of pushback on a lot of stuff, when teachers are acting like they are the parents, when politicians are acting like they are the parents, people going after people's kids, you see a lot of pushback now on that, where people are like, all right, hold up. This is too far, too much. This is my kid. You don't have the control you think you have, even though the politicians will say that, they're raised by the state, and teachers will talk about how, they're the ones that are responsible for, raising these kids. And granted, there are some crappy parents out there, and the teachers do have to do more than just teach sometimes. But at the same time, don't come after people's kids. And I've seen that happen to where people have sort of stood up. My concern is that a lot of people just sort of remain quiet about a lot of this stuff until it gets too bad. And then to what you were talking about, Tag, people deciding to just kind of leave it and say, you know what, I'm going to go do my thing, because that still is possible here in the United States.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that doesn't really solve the problem. You just extract yourself from the problem.
Well, from the problem there, but I think it opens up opportunities to create the solution to where you go if you're willing to do the things it takes to create the solution.
Sure.
Which we can talk about later. But G, you were saying, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. I was going to say that they hit on something really important that I think everybody needs to think about. And I'm not going to presume to speak for everybody on the panel, but I think I'm pretty close to it. I don't care what you do. I don't care how you live your life. You know, the problem arises. I'm going to go to the you will eat bugs thing. You know what? I have no problem eating bugs. I've done it before during survival training, and on dares. but the day that you tell me you will eat bugs, that's where the problem is. And you know, and we said a lot of stuff negative about the trans community, and it goes to that. I don't care how you live your life. The problem is whenever you try to force me. You know, the whole shooting in Nashville, they were going to have a day of vengeance, because I'm not really quite sure why I'm not quite sure. You know, and then there's a guy, Jeffrey Marsh, Nick Freitas, who's a member of the Virginia legislature, did a video of it. And this Jeffrey Marsh is a huge trans activist. He's got a Patreon page so that teenage children can talk to him without their parents knowing about it. You know, really sketchy stuff in my opinion. But this guy said, you will respect this. Well, good luck on that one, buddy. Yeah. You know, and if you deserve the respect, yes, I'll give it to you, but don't demand it of me, and don't demand that your subjective reality becomes my objective reality. Right. You know?
Yeah, there's an organization called that's Gays Against Grooming, and they get crapped on. You know, it's like so you're upset with groomers, like people that are against groomers. That's what you're literally where their line's at now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think this is kind of what I started the conversation. You know, we talked about the Tytler cycle, and really what it says is, you know, that bad times breed strong men. And I think in the end, with all of this stuff coming on, maybe what comes out of it is we're breeding more strong men as we get further and further down, you know, this road. And maybe it doesn't have to go to complete batshit crazy before, you know, somebody stands up and does something about it. I don't know, but
you know, a good adjunct to what you were talking about there is Sir John Glubb in Search of Security, the Rise and Fall of Empires. It's like a 78-page essay that he wrote in the early 70s. But it talks about the cycles that all great empires go through, and it's a great supplement to the thing that you were talking about, Tag. It's just they both go together so well, and it's like a roadmap to what's happening to our country right now.
Yeah, crazy. Well, you know what though? I think it's up to men like us to take a stand and to speak our mind, and to, you know, not be just like we talked about. You know, YouTube's going to demonetize. Do it. Rock on. Bring it on. You don't pay me anything anyway. I mean, I spend, you know, 20 hours a week working my ass off to produce content to make $135 at the end of the month. So whatever, bring it on, you know?
Yeah.
I don't care.
Well, the problem is I'm tired, and I don't want to have to deal with this.
Because you're old.
Well, I am old. Yes, you're right. I am old. I'm extremely old, and I'm extremely tired, and I don't want to have to deal with this, but they're forcing me to. And all it does is make me angrier and angrier. You know, there's going to be a bunch of old dudes our age with nothing left to lose, and hopefully we'll be the nucleus of a resistance to what's going on.
Yeah.
Do you know there was a Twitter post or whatever you call a tweet that went out yesterday? I was looking at it, and it was the title was "It's starting," as in like the resistance is starting, right? And I think it was trying to crap on these guys, and what it was a video of the Combat Vets Motorcycle Club, which is really, it's a charitable organization, right? And they had their annual meeting this week, and there's hundreds of these guys standing there, and they're standing up and they're saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And that was pushed out like, oh, look at these white nationalists, everything they're pushing around. And it's It's people who are proud to be that they're proud of their country, or at least, on some level what their country was. And so they're pushing the narrative. So yeah, I think when you talk about the resistance and all this stuff, like you said, they're forcing it into it, because your back's up. How much farther in the corner can you get pushed?
Yeah.
I got no more red lines, man.
They're forcing that division. They're making you choose a side, one side or the other. And they're separating people into different boxes rather than just being all Americans. We're all separated into all these little boxes. So
yeah, it's really too bad. I've got a couple friends who are homosexual, and they're good friends. They're good people, and they don't want their business out there. They don't want what's going on. The ones that I don't know, and they're decent people, but I think the force feeding of everything, trying to get us to think that's the norm when it's not, it's absolutely not. We are the many, they are the few. They just got us convinced they're the many.
Look at the whole deal with Caitlyn Jenner, right? The left attacks Caitlyn Jenner all the time.
Yep.
Right? Because it's not into the hey, they try to say we're not being sexual with these kids in these dances that they're doing. But like by its nature, that's what when trans people do their stage acts, that's what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the whole trans community? No, I think it's a small part of the trans community, but that's the part that they're all given the megaphone, because that's the part they can use to drive the wedge.
yeah, I've got a couple of family members that are gay, and I don't know what they do on the weekends. I don't care. Right. That's the whole thing. They're great. They're great dudes. I could care less. I don't involve myself in what they decide to do in their own lives, and they don't involve themselves in what I do. And that's the way it should be. But these days, you're not allowed to do that. You've got to pick a side, one way or the other. It's not okay to just not be racist anymore. You have to be anti-racist. You have to go out there and preach and do that stuff about how evil everyone is. You've got to be an activist these days. You can't just be an American that just wants to get their stuff done and live their own life. You got to be out there and be an activist. And
it goes beyond I think too, where you have to be the activist. Look at regular TV, right? Go on regular TV and watch the commercials. Watch the weather. Hey, I'm not a thin guy. I've never been a thin guy, right? I've always been more of a fat ass. And you know what? You don't want to see me up there doing the weather, but that's what they're pushing, right? And they're pushing all this. They're pushing their agenda really subtly through commercials. Hollywood. We were talking about Hollywood earlier. Have you heard about what is going to be required to win an Academy Award moving forward? That Hollywood changed. Hollywood now, if you don't have 1/3 of your cast and 1/3 of all the people working on your set are some type of minority class, then you're not going to qualify for an Academy Award. So there goes The Godfather. There goes Saving Private Ryan. I mean, put your movie here that you want to. I mean, I guess Star Wars would be good because they got a bunch of aliens in it. Maybe that would qualify. I'm not sure. But it's across society. So the subtleness of what they're doing it's a tsunami of pushing is what's going on.
Yeah, but I think it backfires. Again, I think that we're breeding tougher and tougher people. And I think there comes a point where I've already done it, where people say, I'm done. I'm leaving the beast.
Yeah.
Hell with Hollywood, right? To hell, I'm not going to the movies. I'm just not doing it. I'm done. Screw it. I'm done. If that's how you're going to be. And I think maybe, some strength comes out of that. I hope.
I think that needs to become a movement. It needs to grow to where people are more and more people, whether it's going to the extent that you guys have gone, whether it's doing something like Brian's doing, which is sort of the nomad type thing, or even, something to just whatever level you can, just saying, you know what, enough of this. There's not a whole lot I can do to change the entire system, but there are things I can do for myself. And if I create that community, I surround myself with people that agree with me and sort of spread that idea, that vision. Maybe it does get to the point where Washington is not doing us any favors, regardless of which political aisle it is, which politician it is. They are not on our side. So expecting change that way is frivolous. So it is going to have to be like what we've all been doing, like preppers in general do. Just teaching your kids, teaching your friends, your family, building that idea rather than what's being pushed through mainstream media, what's being pushed all over the place these days.
Well,
Yeah,
I think what you said, Dell, was perfect. Yeah, but the thing that everybody needs to realize, it doesn't happen on accident. You have to be intentional. When you take a stand, you draw those red lines, you build community, you have to make it intentional, and you have to do it with a purpose. If you're waiting for somebody else to do it for you, it ain't going to happen. And if you are waiting, if you're looking for politicians to fix the problem, yeah, good luck there. And it ain't going to happen. That's the one thing Tag has taught me over the years, is we have to be intentional in our actions on building community.
When it goes a step further than community, though, too. Community is a huge piece of it. But there's another thing. We get to choose where we buy our tomato or we grow our tomato. If we can't grow it, we can choose where we buy it. We can. Yes, it's inconvenient. I can stop using PayPal to pay my water bill. I can drive a check down to the water company. Yes, it's inconvenient, but I can still do it. I do a whole series on my channel called Starve the Beast. And that's all we talk about, is how to break the system, how to stop giving them our money. Every time you use a credit card, that credit card company is getting 3%, and you are funding this bullshit. How do we, as a society, I don't want to fight them. I don't even want to pay attention to them. I want to exit the system. I want to create my own system. I want to walk away from it and say, you know what? Screw you. Because if I take their money from them, I'll get everything else. I'll get everything else, because it's the only thing they're going to listen to. What say you?
It's Bud Light gives me hope. Right? Watching the Bud Light deal gives me hope. And I love going to the grocery store more and more. And every time I do, the first thing I head for is the beer aisle. Mm-hmm. And I love going in the beer aisle and looking at the Bud Light and seeing the digital coupons they have with the Bud Light. Like just down here the other day, they're selling a 30-pack for $20 or $22.99 with a $19.99 digital coupon for a 30-pack, right? And then on top of that, and I like it because it was just a groundswell, right? It's not a cancel culture. We're not trying to get businesses to cancel Anheuser-Busch like they do to us. It's just people saying, I'm not going to buy your product. And by and large, that Bud Light is sitting on the shelves when, hey man, I know people are hurting right now. They could probably be like, man, $2 for a 30-pack. That's not a bad deal. The other thing that happened on this, that maybe it starts teaching some companies deals, is when Bud Light or Anheuser-Busch didn't push back on this hard enough, they dropped their ESG score. Anheuser-Busch used to have was one of the companies that had the top, like a 100 ESG score, whatever that's ranked on. It dropped because they didn't push back hard enough. So they're in a no-win situation. The woke mob is hammering them on their ESG because they're not pushing back on hard enough on everybody else. And everybody's like, yeah, dude, I'm not buying your beer.
Yeah.
To me, that's the answer. Either grow it yourself or make a decision to put your money in the hands of companies that are doing what you want them to do. Local companies, whatever it is that, bring on your own agenda. Gee, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you're going to say
I got to step away for a second. I'll be right back. Got to go take care of some business on the homestead. Excuse me.
Do you have to kill something?
No, nothing's going to die.
Talk to a man about a horse.
That happened yesterday. I'll be right back. I got to go take care of something.
All right.
I had a conversation with a good buddy of mine who just graduated Chicago's Booth Business School, right? And we were talking about business today. And I was like, I really think the way the country was running, and obviously now we see more of the chicanery that was going on behind the scenes, but the company was running pretty good back in the late 80s and the 90s, right? And I'm like, what did we do back then? We didn't give into all this stuff. And I think really that's going to be the differentiator. You worked in finance. You're always talking about differentiators between businesses, right? Yep. And so I think that's one of the things that we might be seeing is as companies, get the cojones to say, I don't care about your ESG. I don't care about your DEI. I think you're going to see an upswelling of, hey, companies that are successful, because just like you say, hey, we're going to do business with that company because it's not following the ESG crowd. It's not trying to tell me what I need to believe. Target. I love the fact that Target's getting hammered and they don't know what to do now. They don't know whether to shit or go blind. Mm-hmm. Oh, should we put the pride stuff back up front? Should we put the because they're getting hammered by both sides. And it's like, hey, choose your poison, Target, and go with it.
Yeah,
That's
they're
what
backing
happens
off
when these
17
companies do
billion
that stuff. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Tag.
I was going to say they're backing off because they lost $17 billion.
Yeah.
Money's the answer. If we attack the money, we can. I'm telling you what, we Americans can make a difference by taking a stand. We don't have to fight them. We have to ignore them.
Yeah.
We have to
Well,
go bald, as they said in Atlas Shrugged.
right.
We
Well, that
all have
goes
go
to
bald.
that goes to the Florida Mama Bears comment that you just posted, right? Starbucks removed, and they're starting to get some backlash from the left, but they're looking like we can't afford to not have people drink our beer or our coffee.
Yep, that's right. Gives me hope.
We talk about it all the time, me and Brian, and it makes a lot of sense. There's that pendulum. And hopefully that's what this is. It's just so far on one side right now that it just seems absolutely insane. And eventually there's going to be that more of that pushback. So this all goes back to your comment. Is there hope? And before we had this conversation, I was thinking probably not. But now I see that little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah.
Well, and guys, here's the thing. If we can get 100 of us, 200 of us, 300 of us, 1,000 of us, all preaching the starve the beast message, all preaching the get out of the system message, the going galt message, the parallel society, parallel economy, and we all you get enough people doing it, they're going to notice, because all they know is the dollar, and you do that by building community, and you do that by purposefully spending your money. Every single dollar we spend has to have a purpose to it, and you have to understand where it's going. And I know it's a pain in the ass. Fuck, it sucks. I live it. But if you don't do that, this is just going to keep on going, because they're not going to get your vote.
You mentioned PayPal, right? PayPal was great because it was easy to use. I have riders that I pay on my website. It was easy to use. The problem is it's PayPal. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna bend to it. So now I have to go around the corner using QuickBooks and different things to get them paid. It's more of a pain in the butt. But in a way, I enjoy it. Every time I take that extra time to do it, it's like, screw you, PayPal.
That's
screw
right.
you, PayPal. And
right.
And I see some of the comments in here that all American prepper. Oh, there it is. The harder they push, the stronger I get. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's 100% right.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I don't know where G went, but he must have had to go kill something.
A big horse.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm curious, Tag. I was going to ask this last week and I completely spaced it out, but you were talking about starving the system and getting, you do a lot of the basically off the grid stuff.
Yep.
I'm curious where you started out, how long it took you to get there, because the average person is probably somewhere. And Brian, I know your story, but you can chime in too, because you've got sort of a similar situation. But I think a lot of preppers are probably sort of somewhere around my range, where it's whether they're suburban or something like that, or with me that I really would like to get to your guys' level. There's just a lot of roadblocks in the way. Where did you start? I mean, did you start out in the suburbs and you had a garden there and doing things like that, and then you decided to just expand?
Yeah. 10 years ago, my wife drove a Beamer. I had a Hummer. And we traveled all over the world. We've been all over places. She carried a Coach purse. Life was just this great place that propaganda told me I was supposed to be, right? Because that's what I believed success was. But as I became more and more awake to everything that was going on, I got pushed into a corner. Once I got into that corner, I had to do something. So for me, it was a hatchet. It wasn't the little bitty steps. But I think what I would tell anybody who's thinking about that is, you may not be able to just move out of your house, go get some land and go off grid today. But what you can do is begin the building blocks to get there. You can put the little things in place, because guys, it's a long, long process. I saved money for 9 years to buy the piece of land I live on today so that I could pay cash for it. It wasn't like I just went down and said, oh, here's $175,000 check or whatever it was. It's not how it worked. I saved and saved and saved, and I saved and did those things because it became so important to me to stop the stroke. And stroke to me is it's the leverage they hold over you, right? And in the corporate world. And so because you got all of these cool things, they can make you do anything they want you to do. We in the last slide, we were talking about soldiers doing, obeying orders. So it's kind of the same thing in the corporate world a little bit. But anyway, to answer your question, so what I started was I bought just a blank piece of land. I was still living in my other house. And I went out and I said, okay, if the shit hit the fan tomorrow, what will I wish I had done? I built me a small cabin. I built, put in a water system, a small solar system, and then just continued to expand to today. I live completely off grid in a 5,000 square foot home, and we do it all for ourselves. But it's a huge process. It's not a light switch, and nobody gets to go just do a light switch. It's not how it works.
Yeah.
Baby steps, but do something. Even if all you can do is stop using PayPal.
Yeah.
If all you can do is just say, hey, I'm going to drive my water bill down, or I'm going to whatever it is, stop doing business with US Bank and Bank of America. Find a little local bank if that's what you have to do. Instead of going to Walmart, go to the local grocery store. Yes, it's going to cost money, but you can't have convenience and freedom. You got to pick which one you want. Take a stand or shut the fuck up.
Well, I think freedom gives you a convenience, right? It gives you the convenience that you're not having that gorilla hanging over your shoulder all the time that comes with all that stuff. You look at credit cards now, right? Credit cards are 30-something% annual percentage rate. And they're going up. They want us to be in debt, that they want us to be slaves. And I get it, man. I was totally in debt, right? Just a few years ago, I was totally in debt.
Yep.
And I saved up money. I got money ready. And then I called the credit card companies and I said, hey man, what are you willing to do with me? Mm-hmm. And I ended up getting them to nuke most of my debt, like half of it. Mm-hmm. Right. And it ends up being on your credit for 7 years or something like that. But I didn't care. I'm like, I don't want credit. Every time I've dealt with credit, it's gotten me into problems. And maybe not everybody doesn't have to run that way, but not having that credit has allowed me to save up money. So now I don't need to worry about it month to month. Like I am my own credit, and working on for.
Isn't it crazy how we are taught that our status as a citizen in our country is how well we can hold debt? To me, this is just insane. That's called a credit score. And isn't it funny how the very people that give you a credit score are $32 trillion in debt?
Well, it's crazy. After I got him to nuke my debt, where I was like, hey dude, I'll give you half. And they did a charge off on me. Within 6 months, I started getting, hey, you're pre-approved for a credit card. Because they want you back. They want to give you that taste of that blow again. They want you doing the crack and getting you back up to the well to start dipping back into it.
Yep.
Go ahead, G. You were going to say something?
So Tag and I go round and round on this. This is a disagreement we've had for several years, because he says he was forced into doing it, and I disagree. He was not forced into doing anything he did not want to do. He made the conscious decision. And anybody out there, anybody on this panel, anybody on this chat, you can make the decision to be a slave to the system, or you can make the decision to become free. The problem is that making that decision to be free comes with consequences. And I understand where Tag is coming from by saying he was forced to, because morally he did not have any other choice. And there are people out there, and how do I say this? So they do certain things, or they did certain things over the course of 2020, 2021, because they wanted life to get back to normal. They wanted to go on vacation. They were financially in a position where they had no other choice, but they made a choice, right? And I'm not belittling anybody that made those decisions like that, because I can't speak for them, right? And had I been at 17 and a half years, 6 months away from having that sweet spot where they couldn't fire me from the federal government, I'm not sure what my answer would have been. That was a lot of money. Not this patch, but I talk about my $1.2 million free man hat that Tag gave me. Well, if I was 6 months away from getting that, would I have made the same decision? I'd like to think so, but I can't say 100% that's the case. But the whole point is, we're getting to the point where people are going to have to start making decisions, and they're going to have to decide what they're going to accept and what they're not going to accept. We had the luxury as a culture over the last 20, 30 years to take things for what they were and just kick the can down the road. But I'm telling you what, we've come to the point in the road where there's a dead end sign ahead of us, and we're running out of room to kick that can, and people are gonna have to draw a red line and say, this is my no-go zone. You can't take it any further, you know. And sorry if that sounds kind of like a little downer, but
that's exactly the point. Is they took me to the line I was no longer willing to cross.
Exactly.
And they forced my hand because I wasn't going to do it. It was now, yes, could I have just gone along? Of course I could have. And, I could have just followed orders. But I think we all get to that point that we all got to have a line. And I think is the kind of the topic of tonight, as this line continues to get harsher and harsher and harsher, it's going to meet more and more people's lines. And hopefully, I pray that be true. And more people will stand up and say, I mean, gee, you took a big stand. You walked away from a whole bunch and you played the game really well to end up with a free and clear homestead where you didn't have to be a slave anymore. Right.
You know what? The decision I made, the decision I made in light of what other people are going through is nothing. Mine was an easy choice. I don't know if you guys, did you watch the video with Joseph, the army guy that got kicked out because he decided not to take the shot?
I did.
Well, he went to Fort Sill on Friday to get his medical like he'd been doing since October, and they banned him from the hospital because he didn't have a shot. So now he's got to go all the way from southwestern Oklahoma to Oklahoma City to the VA. And that young man took a stand, and he was demonized, and he was vilified, and he is still fighting it. So what I did, I'm not going to say I was smart. Maybe I had the forethought and I was headed down that road, and we had put everything in place where I could pull the trigger on it. But these guys like Joseph and the guys that the 164,000 military service members that got kicked out because they took a moral stand on sovereignty over their own body. Those are the guys that are heroes in my book. Those are the guys that made hard decisions, not me.
Well, you guys keep talking about success, right? And I think I went down the PTSD rabbit hole. One of the things lessons I learned when I was in crazy camp working on that is when it comes to success, everybody thinks of success as, oh, I rose the corporate ladder. I did, I made this much money. I have the BMW, the Lexus, all these different things. Well, part of the whole PTSD thing when I was doing recovery is they get you to draw boundaries. And what I realized after a while is you don't draw boundaries with other people. I can't force you to do anything.
Correct.
I draw a boundary with myself. And one of those boundaries is I define what my success is. Just like you do, Tat. You're out living off the grid. That's your definition of success. And maybe, like when these guys when he's driving across Oklahoma, in a way, that's his version of success. Like, hey, I didn't compromise. So I think we all have to double down and figure out what is my definition of success? What means success to me? What's the thing that motivates me that is within my moral wheelhouse that I'm not caving in? And it's interesting when I look at the system and I look at the uniparty and the government and everything, and I was neck deep in all that stuff. I spent 10 years contracting overseas. Is everything they tell me right now is completely 99% of it is opposite of what I've determined is success. So it almost makes it somewhat easier when you're trying to figure out what you want, right? Did the government and did the establishment tell me that this is good? Well, I should probably look to see what's opposite of that, because that's probably where I want to align my stuff, right? So again, I think if you can define and truly get down and lose all the BS and look at yourself and define what determines success for you, and then go after that. Like you said, hey, you bought your land. Then what do I need to do right now? If I want to have a cabin, I need some water, whatever that is, and start working towards that. You can get there, and it might seem like a long way off, but maybe 3, 4, 5 years, even 10 years. It gives you something to focus on, and every step forward is one step closer to that thing that you define as success.
Yeah.
And that answer right there is exactly why I've been a fan of you two since before you guys started your YouTube channel. Seriously. I love that stuff, man. Good job.
Rain Country had a comment early. I think that's her name, right? She was talking about prepping supplies, and everybody thinks that prepping is so expensive. And sort of to build on what Brian was talking about and what you two have been talking about as far as getting to the point where you are, that there's like behind me, I got a lot of stuff, a lot of crap, right? As preppers, there's a whole lot of crap that we can have We need bug out bags, get home bags, 15 different kind of bags, right? But the stuff that is really important, that makes you really prepared for whatever might come your way, is doing the things that you guys have done, is sort of taking the steps that Brian has to kind of separate and figure out where he's got the freedom to decide exactly how his future is going to unfold. And it doesn't have to do with his credit score or anything like that.
Yep.
So while there are important things in preparedness, there are supplies, there's the food and all of those things. There are things that you guys need for homesteading.
Yep.
A lot of this, you getting to the point where you guys have gotten, a lot of that is mental. A lot of that is strategic planning. A lot of that is understanding exactly what can happen and being pragmatic and realistic about everything and just going for it. And if you want to get that bug out bag because it makes you feel better, go for it. But that's, when you talk about how many disasters that's going to be valuable in, doing what you guys are doing encompasses far more than what a bug out bag would. So,
and Tag, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the intentional community that we're building now kind of happened by accident. Because I remember sitting on a concrete pad as you were building your house, having a conversation about building a traditional mutual assistant group bug out location. And the only thing we could come up with after 5 hours of discussion was that we had not come to any conclusions and we needed another meeting. And then you tell them the story about when you were at Next Step and the guy came to you and I don't remember his name, but he was talking to you about how he was so impressed about the way we were trying to build this community because it wasn't traditional.
No, it's not traditional. Well, but there's more to that story. But what you were actually talking about was Jim Gale, is who you're talking about from Food Forest Abundance. But the thing, him and I had a lot of chance to talk. So I was blessed. I went and spoke at the Parallel Society Convention in Georgia. And I spoke in the exiting the technocratic state part. And I spoke with Derek Bros. I don't know if you guys know who that is or not, but from the Conscious Resistance, total freedom fighter. And then Jim Gale and some of the other ones. But anyway, what we were talking about is why these groups constantly fail. And what I told him is what I learned through this whole process of these last however many years is that sovereignty was the key. Instead of trying to put 40 people on a piece of property, what you really want to do is buy a county and fill up as many homes as you can, get every piece of land sold, get every house sold, move as many people as you can into a small geographical area to where they can retreat to their own property where they have their own sovereignty, and you'll eliminate 99% of the problems. Yeah. And so him, because he's got a community in Florida, and so him and I talk about this. Actually, I have him on the show tomorrow. We're going to talk about these exact same things. But anyway, so that's kind of how it went down. Was I got a chance to speak with Jim Gale, and we started talking about what makes them fail, and there we were, basically.
Well, I think doesn't a lot of times too, people, when they look at having a prepper community, a prepper group or whatever, they start looking at like, all right, well, you're a doctor, you're this. It ends up, Dale and I have talked about, it's like you're trying to assemble a Dungeons and Dragons party, right? we got all these pieces rather than looking at who am I values aligned with?
Yeah.
And that you can get along with, and that, a sense of community. When you were talking about that, I just got this vision of building an Amish community is what you're kind of what it sounded like.
Yeah. So we've got down here in our area, I think I did the math the other day. We're over 1,200 acres now with all the homesteads and all the, stuff, all primarily located in one county in America. And we just keep filling it in and filling it in and filling it in and filling it in. And hopefully in, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, that's, 7,500 acres. And we, you start getting into that kind of spot. And I think what happens is when you try to get free, and I've learned this the hard way, going from 0 to 50 was pretty easy. You can buy your way there. You can buy your way yourself to energy independence. You can buy yourself through water independence. You can buy yourself through a lot of those problems. But then what happens is you start getting above 50 and you start working on things like food independence. Food independence, you can't buy your way to, bud. You got to work your way to. It's not how it works. You can't buy your way to it, and so the jump from 0 to 50 was much easier than the jump from 50 to 60, if that makes any sense. It gets progressively harder, as you go for long. So anyway, so let's go into the premise that I can produce 70% of my own needs. Where do you get the other 30? Well, where you get the other 30 is community. And where you get the other 30 is building that parallel. And what you get it is by getting that 7,500 acres and starting to eat up those pieces. And again, I just don't think you can get to 100, but I certainly think 90s is possible somewhere.
Yeah. No, that's a good thing. You know, I have a book coming out, and one of the things I talk about in the book is I get into the survival rule of threes and kind of tweak it and call it the survival pyramid. But the top level, or the last level on that, you know, after you get past the 3 weeks without food, is 3 months without society, without community. And you know, and some people look at it and they're like, well, I don't. You look at community as like you're forcing yourself. I got to have a community. Well, yeah, but you get to define your community. Maybe that community is your family. Maybe that community is a group of families, whatever that, or like you down there with your homestead. But I think a lot of people really miss that point, that you need that. And we're, like you said, with your 30% that you don't produce, you're going to get that from within that community because you have so many people there that do produce that.
Yes. Yes. When I think people must understand what community is. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No,
I was just going to say it was a really good point about sovereignty. I'll keep this short too, but that was a really good point about sovereignty, because whatever it is in our brains that get people like us to be interested in preparedness, interested in those things, it's also the same thing that it's that American mentality that let me do my thing, don't encroach on my freedoms, don't, you know, all of this stuff. So having that little bit of separation, like you were talking about, just lends itself to the mentality that most preppers have. Some people love that whole apartment complex living group mentality, and everyone. Some people love that. Preppers, for the most part, don't. So it's just a very good point, and I think that's how preppers and people with the conservative mindset, Americans, basically, a lot of them think.
It's community's not today, and to Garen's point, is not today what I originally thought it was. You know, I think when we started down this journey all those years ago, we were thinking about the James Wesley Rawls survival or patriot book, that prepper group thing. But really what it's turned out to be isn't any of that. It's today, guys, before these shows, these back-to-back shows I did, I went to a new community member who bought a piece of property here. He needed to get a barn up for his animals. So me and another homestead drove over there today, and I brought my skid steer with me, and we drilled holes to put the poles in so he could build himself a barn. That's community. It's not sitting around figuring out what the SOP is for a nuclear event. It's really not what it is. I mean, you would think it is, but it really isn't. It's Grumpy. I hope you don't mind me sharing this, Grumpy, but Grumpy had a catastrophe. He had 300 birds burn up in a fire. And he lost his chicken coop, lost this huge investment, because it's not just as easy just going buying chickens. They got to mature, then they lay eggs. I mean, there's a whole process to it. And the community came together to replace all of his chickens. That is what community is. It's not what people think it is. And I'll quit ranting, but go ahead, G. You were going to say? Or he's froze. See how he's grumpy? See his face?
Yeah. You really made him mad there.
I know, right? See that?
He's catatonic now.
Well, you know, Dale, you were talking about what you think the stuff is, and I think the thing that binds preppers together is I think a lot of what we do it out of worry, but then we also do it out of we want to be free, we want to be independent. So
yes,
yeah. It's just why we do what we do, is because it's not necessarily the concern that everything is going to turn into a Mad Max situation or nukes are going to start flying or anything like that. But it is the fact that it is possible, regardless of what that situation may be. There are 100 different things that are possible and bound to happen at some point. So getting away as much as you possibly can from the structure, I suppose, the better off you're going to be. If the lower you are in that tower, the less far you have to fall. I don't know if that's the right way to say it.
That said well.
Yeah. Agree.
Yeah.
I think I actually said well.
Yeah. I want to touch on something that Brian said, that whole 3 months without society thing. You know, a lot of, if I talked about this last week, I apologize. I think it's so important. A lot of prepper groups, they're like, we're going to seal ourselves off and we're going to let the chaos happen around us, and we're going to write it out, and then we're going to open our doors and we're going to come out. That is the completely wrong approach, because you're abdicating control over your community at that point. You have to be out there in the worst of times, and you have to be out there showing people a better vision of what's going to come out the other side than what the other people are. Because if you don't, you're going to end up with the stereotypical apocalyptic warlord. You know, if you're not out there telling people, hey, this is how we build community, somebody like that's going to step up and they're going to take control, and you're going to abdicate any chance you have to mold your community down the road. And yes, is it scary? Yes. Is it dangerous? Absolutely. But it's something we have to do. We cannot let circumstances lock us away and let other people control what happens in our community.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. I put this one up here on purpose. So Ghetto says no dreadlocks or sense of patchouli psychedelics. But I think that this really brings up an important point. You can't be free if people can't be sovereign. Mm-hmm. You can't be. How hypocritical is it? Right? What Grumpy does on his land, I don't give a shit. If he needs a hand, let me know. I don't care. You know, let's all grow some crops. Let's have some fun. If I need some chickens, hook me up. If he needs some, I'll hook him up. Life's good. Next.
Absolutely.
It don't have to be anything more than that.
Well, and I think you get, and this isn't the DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion kind of stuff, but I love having people around me that have diverse schools of thought, diverse ways of thinking, because it always challenges me to try to refine my way of thinking. You know, I look at it as there's a truth that's out there. There's the reality of the world. And then there's our perception, right? At one end. And then you have, and we measure our perspective with that perception. So the only way I get closer to having a refined version of reality is by challenging myself with people who I don't agree with and saying, is there one piece of what they're saying that maybe might be right? And I can plug that into my reality and make my reality that much better. And so, hey man, I'm all about dreadlocks and patchouli, dude. So anyway,
we met this guy down in Oklahoma last week, Mike, and I did an interview with him, and he's promoting the Mid-Continent Fest, which is in Sepulveda, Oklahoma. And it's basically a bunch of anarchists and libertarians with the small L, not the big L, getting together. And I told Mike, I said, listen, I'm a constitutional Republican. And I believe that that's the way to go. And that is like completely contrary to what most of the people in this thing believe in. I want to go to this thing. If it's happening in September, October timeframe, and if it's not conflicting with something, I'm going to go down there and I'm going to go see what these people are about. And I was telling Darren Hacks from the Homesteader, I was like, I have no idea why I find these guys fascinating. And he made a comment that I thought was pretty striking. He said, maybe you understand that they're about 6 years ahead of us in their thinking. And this is what it's going to take. You know, we have to exactly like Brian said.
I think that was such an important point. He's just going to punch it for a while or pause it for a while. Yeah. Gee, I think that's a great, maybe they are just 6 years ahead. Because the way that I view today, you know, I'm a soldier, love my country. I'm a Reagan fan, right? I grew up, you know, believing we were spreading freedom. I grew up in that whole entire world. And today, you know, I'm not going to tell my, you know, grown boys what to do, but I would not be happy if they went and joined the military. No way.
Yeah.
Today, even though I come from that world, you know, but well said, Grumpy. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Brian, you were going to say something?
No, I agree with you on the military thing, which it's, man, and I struggle with that, right? Because it's so mind-blowing to me that someone, I remember one of my earlier memories as a kid, like a really first cool memory was the bicentennial in 1776. Mm-hmm. And I remember going to that and like, you know, and people were shooting, and this is back, well, here in Los Angeles, I don't think you can do fireworks anymore. Obviously you can't do anything here anymore. But it was a blast. It was just, everybody came out and they were into it. I'm like, wow, this is great. I love America. This is awesome. And it set me on a path. I was in the Boy Scouts. I did all that. And now you get to this point where, you know, the government has been so intrusive and gone so wackadoodle that I look at those things that were part of my core values, core beliefs back then, and going like, no, I wouldn't join the military right now. Yeah. And when I joined the military, I was a paid firefighter in Southern California, and I left because I'm like, I need to do my service for my country. Like, it was a patriotic duty thing. And I went and I left, you know, a career where I was making good money here and joined the military. And then now it's like, I look at this like, what So going back to you guys with independence and being able to live off grid, I think that's one of the best, I don't know if you want to call it a defensive mechanism, but I think it's one of the best defensive mechanisms against the system that's happening right now that you can do for yourself. Because you're not beholden to anybody. You're not beholden to this craziness that we have going on.
Yeah.
I'm the only one here that doesn't have military experience, but it seems to me that it used to be, and I am patriotic, but it seems to me it used to be military. It was for a reason, for the good of the country, it was something to be proud of. Whether you're talking about World War I, World War II, all the way up to maybe Korea. And then after that, it turns into this political machine, this military industrial complex where it's not about our sovereignty anymore, our security, us as a country. It's about people making money. So it's not necessarily the people that choose to go into the military, but I think it means something completely different than what it used to me anyway. Or I see it completely different because it's them playing chess now.
They're using people's
whatever.
They're using people's patriotism against them, right?
Yeah.
I remember when I went overseas to Afghanistan in 2004, I went over as a contractor, and people asked me, why are you going and doing that? And I'm like, because the cause is just. Like, well, what makes you say that? I'm like, we learned our lesson in Vietnam. I grew up, you guys did. I grew up with family, friends and stuff that were killed or hurt in Vietnam and all the anti-war stuff. And from the 70s all the way up until, I went overseas, it was, we won't make that mistake again. And then I get over there and I'm looking at it and I keep looking, and it's like, eventually you're going outside and the dogs are banging, or the cats are banging the dogs kind of thing. It's like, this doesn't make sense with what's going on. Finally I don't know when it set in, but we're not here for these patriotic reasons. We're not here for any of this stuff. It's really think about it right now. We've pretty much, because we're still at war in Syria and other stuff we have going. We've been at war for 23 years now. That would have been unimaginable because Vietnam was the longest war. We'll never do that again.
Yeah, you and I came to the conclusion almost at the same time, different circumstances. Mm-hmm. But I remember my experiences in the first Gulf War in Somalia, really kind of flavored my outlook on life. And whenever we invaded Iraq and Afghanistan, I remember, I don't know if you guys were on the survivalist boards. I know Tag was, because that's where we met. Yeah. I made the comment, Pax Americana. I honestly believe that. I honestly believe that we were gonna bring an American peace throughout this century, and that's probably the thing that soured me the most to the way things are, is because I realized that my faith in that was misplaced and I'd been lied to, and that and being involved in the military and everything as long as I was, because I went to military school, junior ROTC, ROTC, and all that stuff. I was raised in that culture, and I believed America was the good guy. And I can sit here right now and I'll tell you that on balance, the United States government is not one of the good guys anymore. On the world stage and on the domestic stage, it's not going to happen. And so, I completely agree with you, man. It's really disheartening when it happens. I don't know.
When I think about that, like right now, you talking about that, and I try to grasp it, and I grasp. I can understand the mechanics. I can understand what happened, and I get all that. But somewhere in there, it's just like I don't know if I've accepted it, what it is, but it's like I have this confusing thing that I don't know if it's fully registered with me yet. Just how, and I don't know. Maybe it's having that. That sense of I was lied to for so long and I bought into it, or I don't know what that is now, but it's like the weirdest, I feel somewhat shell-shocked, right? Like I feel like when I think about this stuff that my bell's kind of rung, because it's like, it doesn't make sense to me.
Oh, when they canceled the mandate for the federal employees 3 weeks ago, I guess now. That whole week, man, I was angry all week long, and I was beside myself, and it wasn't because of my situation, because I'm way better off way better off than I would have been otherwise. But I look at the how they destroyed people's lives,
Mhm.
and they just and unnecessarily, and it drives me nuts, but it goes back to, how much are we going to accept? And Tag put up that comment from the Drum and Son Live about people tap dance about revolution, and yes, they do, because if you watch a lot of YouTube channels, there are people out there, they talk about the tactical stuff and they talk about like guerrilla tactics and gray man and stuff. Those people are going to get people killed. Seriously, they're going to get people killed because they've got this unrealistic view of the way things are, and if you want to start a revolution, people, go plant a damn garden. Become food independent. And if you want to get into the political realm, understand why you're upset. There are tons of people out that are mad and they have no clue. They just know they should be. And there's not been a revolution in the history of the world that it has ever succeeded when it's fueled by anger and anger alone. And if we want to set this country right, man, we got to know why we're upset, and we got to know what we need to do to get back on track.
Yeah.
The whole revolution thing, all three of you, it's sort of the same thing. Like you said, the boycott, the thing, it's stuff we've been talking about all day or all night. The boycotting the different companies that you don't agree with, the PayPals, the Bud Lights, and all that stuff. That's all, it doesn't have to be, guns and ammo and death and destruction and all that stuff.
That's where it needs to start, because I'll tell you, I spent 2,000 days on the ground, or just over 2,000 days on the ground in Iraq. And it used to boggle my mind, like seeing a family try to figure out how to go to the marketplace and get home and how to get their kids to school without getting them slaughtered in the process. So when people talk about this stuff, I go, dude, you do not want that revolution. You do not want that civil war. Like there is so much death and destruction that comes with that to you and yours. It's especially now with the technology and everything else today. I'm like, no, we need to try to, figure out how to make this thing work. I don't know if that's possible, but like that has to be, and I was thinking about this the other day. If you think back to the American Revolution, the first shots that were fired of that, like they ran out of options and they were coming to get their weapons, their guns. And maybe that's what, kicked something. Maybe it's the gun thing. I don't know. But they had run out of every option that they had, so yeah, anyway.
Well, I think that I love my country, and I'm super proud to be an American. I took an oath then, and that oath stands to this day. I'm not happy with my country. I don't buy into the Republicrat bullshit. They're all crooked. They've got us hoodwinkled, but I love my country. And, I have a lot of people who talk to me, hey, Tag, why don't you move to Belize? And no, I ain't going anywhere. No. I love my country. I just don't like the shit that's going on.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, I'm being asked for a link to some of your guys' channels. We'll do that at the end. Ghetto, we'll do that at the end. All right, bud.
Post that comment from Milo up. He's asking a legitimate question.
Milo, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, exactly. That one right there.
Yeah,
I think he's 100% right on that. Being self-sufficient. I don't know if it's a way to defeat the government, but they need you engaged in the system, right? It's like when I was talking earlier about where I did all my charge-offs on my credit cards a few years ago. And then 6 months later, hey, here's another credit card. They need me. They want us to be part of the system because it fuels everything that they have going. So I think the less dependent that you are on it, it hurts them more and more.
Mm-hmm.
Same lines as the illegal immigration and the financial, keeping people poor and dependent on the government. All of that, the same exact thing. They need that to keep themselves important or needed or necessary or whatever. So if you are self-sufficient and if you separate yourself from that machine as much as possible, they don't like that because that's less power that they have.
Mm-hmm. Well, guys, our economic system is built on infinite growth. It cannot succeed unless it has infinite growth. It cannot. I'm telling you, it will collapse underneath its own weight. And so every time we take a step back, we're actually speeding up that process. Because what they need you to do is to buy a house, and then they're going to convince you have equity, which you don't. It's a fucking lie. and if you ever do the math, you'll learn it for yourself. But they convince you, then you get another nicer house and another nicer house and another nicer house, and you got to have the newer car and you got to have the newer things, and then
Treadmill.
What's that?
The treadmill.
Yeah, whatever it is, but it has to have infinite growth to succeed. So as we become self-reliant, you're actually starving the beast. You're taking the fuel that fuels that system away. So being self-sufficient is a way to combat the oppressive government we're living in today.
Well, I think it's important to talk about, make the differentiation between self-sufficient and modernly self-sufficient. In America, you can't be self-sufficient. You were talking about that earlier, Tag. You can't be. So we want to be modernly self-sufficient, which means taking care of as many problems as we can with the skills, material, and tools that we have on hand. And that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah. And if being self-sufficient didn't cause problems for the government, then South Central LA, the South Side of Chicago, all these impoverished areas that they say they've been working on for years, they would have actually succeeded. There's no investment there's no interest on their part to make that happen, because by keeping those people in those states, they benefit off that.
100%. And if every human being or every American, now I know this will never happen, it's just hypothetical, but if every American could get where it took care of 50% of its own needs, it would collapse the system. That's that simple, because it needs all that. It needs it.
Well, Bill Mollison. Go ahead, Brian.
No, go ahead, Grumpy.
Well, Bill Mollison, the grandfather of permaculture, made the point. He said if 10% of Americans became self-sufficient on food, big ag would collapse. And it's like that across the board. You talk about everything. If you just become disengaged and do it on your own.
Yeah.
That's revolution.
That's revolution. Yes.
Get enough people doing that stuff, and you start a movement. You start getting that moving away from the Hollywood, tech culture. Easier said than done, but for most people don't want anything to do with that. They want their computer. They want their refrigerator to talk to them and tell them what they need to get for, go at the grocery store. They want to sit down in front of their TV after they go work in their cubicle 9 to 5. That's what a lot of people want. So, but the more people that get, into even just a little bit into the preparedness thing, into the self-sufficiency thing, the more you start separating from that machine, and the more they're probably going to, eventually they'd probably fight back a little bit. But I guess that's a bridge to cross on another day or something.
Yeah. And it makes,
it's always a possibility. The American Civil War, the issue was not resolved. They just put it on hold, no matter what the history books tell you. It's put on hold, and it may come to the point where that option has to be exercised. It's not going to happen anytime soon, at least in my opinion. But what we can do by growing our gardens, becoming self-sufficient, working on our sovereignty, is we're molding the future, and we're making it so if it does come to that, then the people that think along the lines we do have a better chance at success than otherwise. And I'm not promoting it. I'm not saying that it's going to happen. I'm not going to say I want it to happen. I'm just saying it is what it is.
Well, you are Grumpy, but anybody want to tackle Drummond's and Live's comment? Because I think this is interesting.
I don't think they need your money, but I think the system needs your money, right? That's why they run a debtor society, right? That's where the credit card's coming out at 30% work. So no, I mean, the government doesn't need your money. But let's look at modern monetary theory and everything they have going on right now. It's they can print money and put zeros into the computers, ones and zeros. And so they never will run out of money, but they don't want us to not be hooked on the system. So by keeping us in debt, they keep us hooked on the system. That's what they need. That's what I think. And that's what they want. You wouldn't be seeing it. If you look back to the COVID stuff and all the relief efforts that they did with everything, it created the largest upward transitional wealth in human history. That wealth didn't go to us. Well, people got a $600 check or a $1,200 check, whatever it was, a couple of times, right? But that wealth went into the Tom Brady's, the Black Rocks, all the wealthy people. And so what are people doing now? People, everybody's like, oh, I don't understand what happened. Well, nobody had to pay rent. Nobody had to pay house payments. Everybody, they stopped having to pay on their debt during it. And then when it comes back out and everybody's kind of saved up a little bit of money, they've gotten a little bit, maybe out of debt a little bit. Now we have inflation, and everything they're doing is running up the cost of everything. So people are going back in, they're running out of money. They're getting credit cards and they're going back into debt. So now they're a debtor society again. And that's the trick. It's not the government doesn't need our money. They can make our money. The establishment needs our money. That's who needs the money, I believe.
That's always confused me, because the minuscule amount that they get from taxes compared to what they spend anyway, to us, it's not minuscule, but the small percentage of their budget, running the show, that comes from our taxes, it doesn't really make any sense. It was a great comment, because and Brian explained it pretty well. And Tag, you probably know better than I do, because I'm no economist, but it just doesn't make any sense that it's so important to raise taxes and hire new IRS agents and all of these different things when there's such a small percentage. I mean, they're writing checks to Ukraine, billions of dollars here, billions of dollars there, and that is okay. But for the average person, we've got to make sure and keep those chains, tighten those up a little bit more, and squeeze more money out of you.
And remember, when corporate America, when them needing your money, when they get your money, it keeps you broke, right? So then you're dependent on that system. It's that circle where we get back to about being self-sufficient, right? The government doesn't want you self-sufficient. So this is their way of making that happen.
Yeah. They talked about many times about they will have a one world religion. You guys have heard this, right? Lots of the conspiracy theory talk. We already have it, and it's money, in my opinion. But the fact of the matter is that, and I'll answer this from my perspective to Drummonds and Live. What they need is not so much the money. They need the role of the money. Yes. They need to go into the tire shop, and they need the tire shop to go in the bank, and they need the bank then to go to the grocery store. That's what they need. And here's the thing, is that the average American today, they don't know this, but if you calculate it all, pays 62% of their income in taxes. And so if they get me at 62 cents, that means I have 48 cents left, which then I go spend at the tire shop, to which then he gets the 62 treatment, to which then he goes to the grocery store and they get the 62 treatment. And in 3.5 transactions, the federal government has all the money back. It's land of make-believe. It doesn't even exist. I'm telling you, it doesn't. I know this. It's just a means of keeping the system moving and going and grinding and turning and churning and burning, because the system is based on infinite growth. So they don't need your money. They need the churn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I took a radiator in today out of a van that I have. We took it in, dropped it off, and to get a radiator record. Well, one, it's hard to even find people that can do radiator recores anymore, because they're all into aluminum radiators with plastic tanks and all that. But to get a radiator record, which a few years ago would have been $150 maybe, is almost $300 now.
Yep. Which is just another tax.
It's another tax. Well, I like to say that inflation is a tax of either an inept or a corrupt government on its people, because they know how to make it work so that we don't have inflation. They can figure it out. So when you get that, I'm not going into debt, but the income that I have being somewhat of a fixed income, guess what? I don't have as much money to spend on other stuff. So now I'm more confined. I'm more controlled. If I had credit cards, I'd be in more of a jam.
Yeah. To what you were saying, Tag, 62%. Lisa, she recently got another horse, and she decided to sell some stuff on eBay. And she's doing, she builds horse jumps and stuff like that, and odds and ends around the house. So not only you get taxed when you get that money from your employer, you get taxed on it there. You go out and buy, say it's a drone or a camera or whatever she's trying to sell. You buy that, you get taxed for it there. Now they're taxing Venmo and PayPal and everything. So once you sell that, you're getting taxed on something you've already been taxed on twice. Yep. So,
if you don't count inflation, it's 62%.
Yeah.
Wow.
If you figure in the inflation, let's say the inflation's in whatever number you believe, let's just say it's 8%. Let's just use that because the math will work good. Now you're being taxed at 70%. And you have to understand that it's not real. The money, it's not about the money. What it's about is the churn. And the best way we can starve the beast is break out of the churn. If I don't produce my own eggs or I don't produce my own milk, but I can get them from Grumpy by bartering something else, that's how I need to do it. And if we don't do that, guys, it will never be fixed.
Well, and Tag, that's probably out of the last year. That's probably one of the most important things you've drilled into my head. You know, you make the example of the Muslim communities. What is it? A dollar goes through their community 7 times before it goes into the federal tax system.
It does, because they trade inside the community.
Right. And you know, we've been blackpilling people left and right on this money thing. And there's the white pill. I'm a firm believer. If we're going to tell people how screwed up it is, we got to give them a solution. We have to white pill them after we black pill them. And the bartering, creating that, you know, the first is community, then it's the alternative economies, and we trade within our communities. And trust me, I'm having a hard time getting into it because I'm so conditioned to spending my money at a store, and I'm that guy that can't differentiate how much I spent on something from what it's worth to somebody else. And that's why I love Bartertown at Midwest Preparedness Festival, because it's teaching me. Tag, one of the best things Tag ever told me was it doesn't matter what it's worth, as long as you think it's worth a deal and the other person thinks it's a good deal, it's a good deal. You know, and it took me, how many years did it take me to get to that point, Tag? 3, 4? Yeah, a while, exactly. You know, so and so there's the white pill. Create those alternative economies and do business with like-minded people and give your dollar to them, like flesh to flesh. Don't let the government get a hold of it first.
Well, hey guys, it's almost an hour and a half, and I want to tell you guys, this has been a great live. This has been deep. It's been, you know, we've had some conflict. It's everybody thinks me and Grumpy's going to beat each other up. It's been really cool. But before we go, I'd like to just go around the table and tell everybody where they can get a hold of you at. How can they follow your work, and how to, you know, because all of us need to get in this journey of starving the beast and figuring it out for ourselves. We just got to go down this road. How do they do that? And then obviously give them your parting advice and your parting words, and then we'll end on that. So I guess I'll start on my top right-hand corner. Mind4Survival, you're up.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. You can find me at just that, mind4survival.com. Head over to the website. I have a YouTube channel. I don't do a whole lot on YouTube and all that, but if you head over to the website, I have a regular podcast that comes out, and just sign up for the email list. I don't do spam or anything like that, but I put out some information about that once or twice a week. And I'd love to have you over there. It's great. Thank you for being here. And hey, and everybody, keep your head on a swivel. Don't go too far down the rabbit hole on becoming the emotional wreck. As soon as you start to get emotionally fired up about this stuff, you're into your central nervous system. You're into your freeze, fight, or flight response, and then that starts hijacking us from making our best rational decisions. So try not to get dropped down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, that was great.
And speaking of rabbit holes, Brian and I also do a show called The Survival Preppers, where we do go off the deep end. And that show is on Rumble. And we sort of talk about, it's more of I call it a therapy session for us, because we just get on there, we vent about current topics, sort of along the lines of what we talked about today. So, but again, that isn't the important stuff in preparedness. What he does at Mind4Survival, what I do at Survivalist Prepper, that is, you know, the important stuff. And at Survivalist Prepper, I've got a YouTube channel here I do quite a bit on. I've got the Bug Out Location, which is I'm trying to build we talked about community a lot today, but just a group of, off of Facebook, off of Twitter, a group of preppers, people interested in preparedness that want to learn, grow, teach, all of that stuff. That's at members.thebugoutlocation.net. But that's just growing right now. But that's the important stuff. That's what I'm doing over at Survivalist Prepper. And then Brian and I were on Rumble. We're not on YouTube anymore because we gave up on it. But that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
Deleted the channel.
Yeah, all good. Grumpy, what do you got? Don't be mad.
Well, you know what? I got to tell this story. And Brian, I don't know if they'll relay this to you. You guys were doing a live on YouTube back when you very first started doing YouTube, because I've been following you guys seriously, like before you started doing it. You were in Harrisonville, Missouri, and you were in the parking lot of the Walmart doing a live.
I remember that.
Okay, you remember that? So that was about 20 minutes away from my house. I was out at Tag's place working on the cabin that I wanted to burn down eventually. And I looked at my wife and I said, man, if we were at home, I would drive down there and I would find his RV and I would knock on his door and tell him to come up and get a good home cooked meal, because we had an RV hooked up and the water and everything. And then Dale goes, yeah, you probably would have set off his PTSD.
Could you imagine somebody coming up to your window while you're sitting on the side of the road doing a live video?
I'd probably crap myself. Like, what?
No, but seriously,
That would've been
you
awesome,
guys,
dude.
you guys do a lot of good work. Seriously, I
Thank you.
really
Likewise.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
As far as we go, Grumpy Acres Farm, our YouTube channel, grumpyacresfarm.com. We got our web store. We're using the YouTube channel as a portal to build our business, building that alternative economy. We hit a whole bunch of different festivals. Look for us in Marshfield, Missouri, for the Ozark Homestead Expo. We're going to be at Self-Reliance Festival. Tag, are you going to be there?
I am.
Are you going to talk? Okay, good.
I'll
And
be
then
speaking there. And I think I'm going
Spags and Getting Deep with Data should be there too.
Yeah.
And then we'll be at the Midwest Preparedness Festival first weekend in October. If you're doing the nomad life, you should find your way out to Lake Prairie, Kansas, and come visit us. It is a blast.
Yeah, I actually plan on hopefully here. I'm finishing up some stuff up out in LA with the family and my dad and such, and then I'll be getting on the road and want to go around and see a bunch of people. I will be in. And Dale mentioned the other week, I'll be at Prepper Camp in end of October, so that should be a good time.
Well, you're always welcome in our community. I think I speak for everybody.
Oh yeah.
And as far as parting comments, man, go out, be better tomorrow than you were today, be more free tomorrow than you were today, and go pursue a life done free, man. Seriously.
Yeah, rock on. I'm Tag from Life Done Free. I have a YouTube channel, Facebook. I'm also one of the founders of Freesteading, so you can go on. We have our own social media platform. You can get on Freesteading and check that out too. It's just a bunch of freesteaders and homesteaders and survivalists and preppers, and it's uncensored. So if you're sensitive, don't go there. That would be a bad idea. Other than that, I think my parting advice would be kind of the topic of all of this today, which was just simply that, we can do this. All of us collectively can do this. It's a small piece it's a small little bite at a time, something so simple as the survivalist prepper said, stop using PayPal. I mean, it's really, right? It's just something so simple like that. And collectively, if we get together, we can starve the beast. And if we starve the beast, we can take this great nation back without violence, without any of those things, by doing nothing more than ignoring them. Right? And so I want anyone to live a life done free as well. And guys, we're going to do this again. I had a great time.
Yeah.
But everybody, thanks for coming tonight. We'll see y'all.
Thanks everyone.
Well.